Hello and a warm welcome to all attendees joining today's webinar, How to Migrate Oracle Forms to ADF, Apex, or any other technology. It's part 3 you see here of the series of webinars we started earlier this year. And the focus for today's session is the migration. My name is Sascha Sander, and it's a pleasure for me to moderate and take you through a quick tour through today's session. But the main part of this presentation today will be performed by my colleague Stefan LaRocca, consulting manager at PITSS. And Stefan is a seasoned Oracle expert with his more than 20 years of technology management and development experience, from IT management to business development up to consulting management. Stefan, can you hear me well?
Yeah.
That's great that you're
Yeah, thank you.
Good, that's great that you're with us. Well, in general, to the audience, we had the chance as PITSS to deal with most migration challenges, and well, probably we have learned the core aspects that we should never lose sight of, I'm pretty sure. So our migration teams are glad to share this experience and discuss specific challenges in the series of short webcasts. So we're dealing with the major phases of such a modernization project that we have split it in this webinar in the plan, the preparation, and the migration itself. So while the first session took place earlier in February this year, we were focused on the project plan and how to take all the important aspects into consideration. And the second session earlier in June, we discussed the architectural choices, prototyping and preparatory steps. Stefan will point out a little bit more. But today, the result is talking about the migration. So all the preparations, the cleanup efforts, the analysis, so all starting parts of this webinar series had one objective only. So to ensure an ideal starting position for the launch into a new development landscape. So in today's session and webinar, you will learn how to migrate your Oracle Forms without losing any investments, how to generate artifacts that are worth to be preserved and automatically enhance your software quality. Let's take a quick view on today's agenda. First of all, I'd like to take a chance for a very quick intro and update about PITSS and PITSS.CON product and solution stack. Then hand over to Stefan. He will share our experience on migrating Oracle Forms to ADF, Apex, or let's say any other user interface focused on the third step mentioned, the migration. While sharing many similarities with other projects, of course, every project has its individual aspects, so we are all aware of that. That's why in this webinar, we'll take into account important project characteristics, and we will describe dedicated steps. We will call the composition, the generated artifacts, and finally, very important, the underlying process. After Stefan's session, we will have a quick wrap-up. We will have the opportunity, of course, to discuss all of your questions that may come up during this session in a separate Q&A session. And therefore, like always in this kind of webinars, some technical infos to minimize any sound problems. All attendees mix are set on mute during the presentation. Of course, you will have the possibility to ask your questions by chat or any dedicated topics coming up during the presentation. So therefore, please use the featured chat questions at the GoToWebMeeting application. You find this at the right bar of this app's chat. So please feel free, log in all your questions during the presentations to be discussed and answered in the Q&A session. We look forward to all your questions. Okay, let's move forward. Some few words about PITSS. PITSS.CON, we are around since '99. So 17 years in the business now. PITSS is working globally directly from our headquarters in Germany with 2 locations, targeting the UK market out of Troy, Michigan, out of Twickenham, and for the Americas with a daughter company, PITSS LLC out of Troy, Michigan. So moreover, we collaborate in various regions with dedicated and certified PITSS partners, providing our solution and expert service in their countries, but backed directly by PITSS. So we are a team of 80 experts. We are a leading provider of tools for Oracle Forms. We work successfully with multiple hundreds of customers internationally, talking about and performing forms modernizations, analysis, and ongoing development based on our core solution, PITSS.CON. We are a long-standing Oracle partner. We are a preferred migration partner. We're doing beta testing for latest forms versions, so that enables us to include in our solution in PITSS.CON product set very fast any functionality required by new forms versions or releases provided by Oracle. We are very busy in the forms community, joining directly or together with partners a lot of events. We run a lot of presentations, so whenever you have a chance to join an event, an on-site event, take a look for PITSS. We would be very happy to welcome you at one of our stands. So, well, our core solution is a tool, PITSS.CON tool set, focused on Oracle applications. Our tool, depending on customer premises, is not only a one-time disposable product, but a short and long-term and multi-functionality tool to reduce costs, to improve development processes, and further application maintenance. So therefore, PITSS.CON offers a huge stack of functionality you see here in this wheel, and it's known as an innovative product for analyzing, for maintaining forms, but even, and this is very important, supporting the evolvement of these applications to latest Oracle technology stack or new infrastructure and architecture. Well, PITSS itself with its team is very experienced in forms. We're doing this technology, driving this since, well, more than 20 years now, starting with the versions Forms 2.0. We're experienced in SOA, service-oriented architecture, with web service technologies. Of course, ADF, it's on our agenda since more than 8 years. We ran a lot of very, very successful migration projects to ADF, and last but not least, mobile staff, mobile applications. This is technology we care about, we are experienced, and we drive in different projects. Well, our product is not working on PowerPoint only. We are very proud to say that we have many, many very happy customers around the globe, be it in Europe, in Middle East, Asia Pacific, or even in the Americas. If you are particularly interested in the one or the other, you see here, for a lot of customers on these slides, we have success stories in place. All of these companies have one thing in common. They are using homemade forms applications or even provide Oracle applications as an ISV partner. So you see that you're in very good company using forms and moving forward to new infrastructure as well. So a quick view, a quick update on PITSS and PITSS.CON. And well, at this point, I would like to hand over to Stefan. But allow me at this stage a quick poll. I would like to start here. It's always very important for us as providers, PITSS, to see what you're targeting at the moment, what our customers care about, what you think. And I appreciate if you could give us a quick feedback on this poll, talking about your target version, if you consider already a modernization to 12c or Apex, if you think about ADF or any open source Java migration probably planned, just click. Appreciate just to give us a feedback on this. Just let it open for another 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1, 0. Thank you very much. And right away, a second one. Appreciate if you can give us a feedback. If you plan a modernization project, what is your timeline expected? What is your schedule? You discuss internally, probably related on your target platform plan, timeline. Give us a feeling on that. Okay. I think another 3 seconds for a final click from your side. 2, 1, and 0. Thank you very much. Interesting to see. And well, at this point, let's hand over to Stefan.
Yep.
Okay, hold on, Stefan. 1 second, please.
No problem. Stay patient.
Okay, you got the moderator rights so far. Thanks for the moment. And well, I'll be back later.
Yep. See you. Wait a second. I have just to choose my screen.
Okay.
And I hope you can see my screen with the presentation.
Perfect.
Started.
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you very much. Warm welcome from my side to the audience. I'm very happy to be able to present in my side, the most interesting part of the modernization step, the migration, starting from an old forms application to a new world, to a new landscape, to a new infrastructure. And we like to focus today on the specific step, what's going on with the sources, how could we put them into different places. As Sasha mentioned, the presentation is part 3 of a series of presentations. Perhaps you joined one of the first 2 webinars. In the first one, we focus on the analysis feature of PITSS.CON, how we can get an overview of the application you'd like to migrate and have some management aspects. The second one is more or less to create a very powerful requirement document for the new application. So we like to reduce all things inside forms to the focus on the specific requirements, so that we can start the migration from a very clean and very good structured application. I'd like to point out an additional thing we just enhanced in one of our last PITSS.CON releases, and probably it was not a part of the last webinar. We have a very fancy and powerful new feature inside PITSS.CON to get a deeper and better understanding on the processes. Till now, we just try all our analysis inside your software based on the source code. So we analyze the forms module in very deep, but if it's not running, it's just a static code analysis. And what we would like to focus is more on the processes, more on the functionalities of your application you do in your real world. So what we do is, in quick, it's more or less like an injection with a different color inside your application to mark the Coldstacks your application is running when a specific process is done by your key user. So we inject each and every source code, each and every canvas, each and every trigger to give us a sign, to give a mark inside our own table, so that we could see later on, to your specific process, these and those triggers are belonging. To make them runnable in your environment, we enhance your application with 2 very smart modules to allow the user to start a specific process and to end the process. With this, we could find the starting point and the end point of the procedure. With this additional functionalities and these additional data, we are able to get more inside view of your application. Rather than only have a specific process to be recorded, we are also able to have a kind of silent recording, so that the application is pulling in the background each and every functionality, each and every trigger inside the database. So we can compare at the end that what your key user is recording as the one and only process has to be done for perhaps entering an order for a customer, and what is definitely done in your production environment. We can compare and can ask some very helpful questions. So there's a specific button not used, there's other validations fired on the process. What's going on? With this kind of information, we have also a different view on the cleansing process. We could not only talk to you or show you the never used objects, so that you see it's dead code, the trigger could not fire because it's no object belonging to, but we can also point out those things that are not used in a specific process or in your running environment. That are very helpful features. And so with these use cases, we have different ways of starting to the migration process. One of those is for a different kind of refactoring your application. Imagine you like to go with a part of your software into the mobile world, and you like to migrate a couple of functionalities out of forms into the mobile application, but not your complete application. So we have to know what objects belongs to the specific process. So we have a way of refactoring your forms module and cutting out all objects belonging to a specific process and create a brand new forms module out of this. And with this, we can start into the migration or simply consider it as a refactoring. That's always possible, or always possible. On the other hand, if we start with the migration, you know you are later on in the Apex world or in the ADF world or Open Java world, and in these cases, you'll like to have a unit test. So if you migrate step by step some things, it will be very helpful to have real sensible data for the unit test. And with the user stories, we are also able to log those entries from the user, which are necessary to run a successful process. So this could be a starting point for unit tests. And out of PITSS.CON, we provide unit tests like SQL Developer, unit test repository, so you can generate your unit tests out of these recorded user stories. Okay, that's more or less a quick addition to our last webinar, what we enhanced in the latest PITSS.CON release to allow a better starting point into the migration process. But what exactly is the starting point? So what we need really to have a decision before we click the button to migrate the sources. One of those is very important. It's more or less an overview of your application to have some subsystems or clustered systems. That's what we said. If you think about a forms application with more than hundreds of modules, there is no big bang to migrate all of these in one step to Apex or ADF later on. You put them into subsystems, into a couple of forms modules belonging together for a specific part of your application. With this, you can also decide what is the target architecture for these clusters. Perhaps what I said before, you can think about having some of those modules in an ADF mobile world. The other one is more or less interesting for a web application to allow customers or other vendors to access to your system. Perhaps a couple of forms modules stay as a backend application. That is also possible. What you definitely need before you start with migration, an overview over your clusters and have them marked in PITSS.CON as belonging together to one cluster. The next conclusion out of this is we have to discuss the final architecture, and this is a decision or a discussion very important for ADF, but also necessary perhaps if you want to go to Apex. Not only the complexity of your application decide the target architecture. You can imagine an Apex application with starting from one forms module is much more easier and have a very simple architecture rather than an Apex application based on 500 forms modules. The same in ADF. But also your team knowledge is very important for the target architecture. Imagine if you have a one-man show as a developer, you consider other architecture patterns rather than a developer team with hundreds of developers who has to be able to develop in parallel on different sources. So you have to provide different sources to allow them to get productive. Mobile, as we told, is a completely different architecture. You still have to split out that, but also the deployment cluster size is important. If you have an application running around the clock for 7 days, 24 hours, the window of deployment is very small, so you have to deploy very small chunks of artifacts in that window, rather than you have an application where the complete weekend is free for a deployment process. And last but not least, your target for the application is very important. That means, do you think about an in-house application which is only exists one time in your company, or do you provide as an ISV an application with hundreds of customers and customize those applications different times? In that case, you have definitely a different architecture. So we split between some kind of monolithic architectures, or perhaps on the other hand, everything as a template. To put that as an example into the ADF world, you can think about clustering and putting information together in a workspace and projects. You think about perhaps a common workspace to provide common functionalities to all of your so-called bounded taskflow workspaces. At the end, consume that together in a master workspace. But why should I talk about this? Because PITSS.CON provide each and every different pattern of architecture. Whatever you decide to be the best for your project, rather than a monolithic approach or a very detailed approach, we have the way of configure the generated sources to be part of each and every architecture. So if you decide perhaps to have a sub-project for shared entity objects inside ADF, to have some base constraints or base functionality checks and proofs common over all your applications, PITSS.CON provides this with a very easy way, with a very simple click to generate into the right architecture. So what I like to say is, think about your architecture, what is your target one, and whatever you decide, PITSS.CON is able, and we could see it later on in a very quick live demo, you can see PITSS.CON is able to generate each artifact no matter what architecture you choose. The second decision you have to make before starting and migrating the code is to think about your user interface. So that's very, once more, an example out of the ADF world. ADF right now have different kind of skins or different kind of style sheets, different kind of UI approaches. And I'll point out very, very different approaches on the slide. On the left-hand side, you see more or less the UI, dynamic UI tab shell from Oracle. That's the way the e-business suite is generated inside from Oracle. So you have a couple of tabs, a navigation bar, and a content frame in the middle, some footer and header information, and so on. You can decide to have this one, or on the other side, totally different. You can follow an approach called Alta UI Skin. That's more or less a kind of tablet-first approach. You try to implement a user interface very common for guys who using tablets and smartphones. So you have some kind of gestures and some arrangements on the items, very large icons on the top to allow them to point with the finger on it and so on. No matter what user interface you like to have at the end, perhaps you have your own pattern, your own page template, and your own skin. All those are decided before you start with the migration, because we generate those components to your skin in the migration process. The next slide is not really PowerPoint friendly, but it's coming up from a live event on the customer side. We talk about the generation process, and I like to pick it because it's very easy to understand, I believe. On top, you have the decision you made before you start with migration. That should be a a symbol for the architecture, should be a symbol for a couple of configuration like skinning and style sheets and naming convention and so on. And you put that all together into PITSS.CON. And in PITSS.CON, you see that's not a click on a button and then it's finished. It's a process. It's a process together with a customer, and that's mentioned by the three guys beside the machine, talking about the target architecture. What do you like to have? What do you like to generate? What should be generated for you in each and every page? What is your error handling good for? What is your multi-language decision, and so on? So we have a discussion with the customer and adjust some minor screws into the machine to generate the artifact at the end. And the artifact split down in three kind of buckets. One bucket in the middle, the most important one, are the source codes. And we generated perhaps for Apex and for ADF, and we see later on for other languages, the artifacts, which are the starting point for your implementation. And on the other side, we generate a log file. It's more or less like a cookbook, I believe, because you see, at first you have to adjust this proof. At second, you have to lay out the screen. At third, you have to do this and that. So you see a log for the next manual steps to do. And last but not least, especially for JDeveloper, we create a metadata for a plugin to allow each developer a very handy access to the old Forms application and to see what was the original source code in the Forms application and what's going on in the new world out of this. Okay, but how could we take care, or how could we say we generate a very good code? And that's what we are in a very, very tight discussion with the Oracle product management and the Oracle consultants. We start on 2006, with our first projects for ADF generation. And that's a time where Roland was one of those guys in the product management for ADF. We have more than one session together with him, and he wrote a case study. And that's a very, very good starting point for us, because that's what we are generated. And that's what he said is the application looks as handmade. And that's what we'd like to do in each and every generation process. You should not be able to see a difference between our generated code, and that what you like to do as a best practice. It should be the same. There are no artifacts from PITSS.CON inside. There's no lady said a spaghetti code inside. It's very clear, structured, and follow each and every rule. And that's what we prove. We take the ADF coding guidelines and the naming conventions, and we prove them more than once and see that we have a very good degree of acceptance in these coding rules. Last but not least, 2 years ago, we support Oracle itself by migrating their retail forms-based application into the ADF world, and they rely on our generated code and start with this to modernize Oracle Retail itself into the ADF world. And that was we are very proud of that project, and we have some fancy features adding into the PITSS.CON out of these projects. So what we can say is we follow the coding conventions from Oracle. Whatever we generate, there are outside more coding conventions for ADF rather than for Apex, but also for Apex we follow best practice, what Oracle would recommend for the Apex application. So before we start generating the UI code, or more or less that what's coming out from the Forms side is to take a first look into the database. When we go to a Java application or even a pool-based application, we have to take care that some kind of patterns are fulfilled inside the database. One of those is to have a primary key in each and every table, because we later on use ADF business components to access them, and business components work best and fine if there is a primary key available. Not only that PITSS.CON could analyze the data model to have a primary key in each and every table, we can take care and generate a primary key for the table, and and rearrange the foreign key constraints for that. We do that in a project, well, not belonging to a migration project. It's just having consolidate a couple of databases into one model, and for that we enlarge PITSS.CON to allow these changes in the data model without any change on front end side. The other thing Java is not very happy with is the Boolean parameters inside function procedures, returning value, and so on. But there's a way to generate very easy wrapper functionalities out of these Boolean, so you can use the same functionality with a simple wrapper around to put them into other data types. And for pooling, we ensure that we can distinguish between stateless database packages and stateful database packages. So PITSS.CON is able to analyze if a package, procedure, and underneath is stateless, and so we can use it without any doubt inside the Java world. Okay, so we prepared the database and now can go on to PITSS.CON and let's see what's able to do on the front end side. But I'd like to show you that on a live system. It makes more sense to have them available over there. So let me quick check, change my screen to a running PITSS.CON environment. We start over here in the PITSS.CON main menu, and we see there's an ADF assistant available. What you prepare is you have created some kind of clusters or systems inside PITSS.CON. That's more or less a bunch full of forms modules belonging together later on. If not, you can decide to add a couple of modules to be belonging to one new ADF project. What you can see over here is, first of all, we have a database connection to prove our entity objects, and we have a workspace, and you can give your own naming convention. That's what Oracle like to have and recommends as a naming convention, but you can do your own one. As you see, there's a couple of preferences available. We can generate it for 11G or 12C ADF, and very fancy, we can translate PLSQL code to Java. We see later on more than this from this. And what Oracle always prefer is to generate framework extension classes to override the standard behavior of ADF to your own behavior, to your own custom classes. So there are a couple of properties you can adjust, and at least there are more than one. You see there's a couple of attributes which influence the generating process, and that's what we say. It's not a single approach for one-click event. It's more or less a discussion with you, your software, your project, your target architecture, how we can configure this generation process to be the best for your project. If you decide for all necessary attributes, you can generate the selected modules to go to the ADF. That's what I prepare over here. You see there are applications generated in our repository, so you can have a quick proof if it's correct and full of all information you like to have. And after that, if you see, okay, a quick cross-check, everything worked fine, we save these information to the file system. And in the file system, we open the project later on with ADF. You see a typically ADF structure with a couple of additional information. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. Okay, so we have a couple of properties to be able to fulfill your requirements, and that's a very typical approach. I never see a project running with the same properties there like the one before. What we enhanced in our last PITSS.CON release, and we are very proud of that, is we integrate a very strange functionality to generate code. That's the Apache Velocity project. Sorry for that. The Velocity project have a way of generating different kind of artifacts based on a template, a very easy to read and write template, and metadata belonging to that template. And that is very powerful to generate files with different structures. So we could generate over here database packages for a table API, or we can generate Java classes for a POJO object, and so on. So whatever is available outside the database, we can use that as the source for the template, and the template could adjust it and edit it by the customer itself. So they could fulfill own naming conventions, own style conventions, and so on in the generation process. It's very powerful and very good. The last kind of adjustment is adjusting the process itself. So that means in each and every project, you not only want to generate information out of the repository, so to overtake the functionality from the form side, normally you like to enhance your application. You like to have more functionalities, more features. And you think about these features, and they could be a little bit kind of complex. So what you do in the ADF world is you generate declarative components for that. So you have fancy objects in your UI or some common classes in the middle, and you like to use that in each and every page or each and every task flow and so on. So we generate complete new information out of the discussion with you in your project to achieve two different kind of approaches. The first one is the quality, because if we generate these declarative components into each and every page, you can be sure it's written in the same behavior in each of your 100 pages. So the quality is good and the same. And it's not time consuming. We have to adjust one time the generation process, and you save a lot of time rather than open a page and put a declarative component inside and so on. There are a couple of examples available. So last project the project leader was a security issue. They have metadata inside a couple of tables which belongs to the grants to specific buttons. So if a button is available or not, or is visible or not, and so on. And we generate expression language components or expression language statements to that buttons out of the existing data model. And that's very, very good and very helpful for the customer. And so on. So there are a couple of ideas and use cases to enhance your existing application. Okay, I just show you the demo how it looks like in PITSS. At the end, you see a couple of files in the file system. If you open those files with the JDeveloper, you see a very regular and normal and very straightforward model view controller project. You see the model is based on the entity objects. The entity object and view objects are generated out of the blocks inside your forms application. Those blocks which are not belonging to a database object, like a typical control block or whatever, is not generated. It doesn't make sense to generate those blocks. We rather than overtake the functionalities and the buttons and put them into the view controller project. And you see a view controller project with fragments, with pages, with a task flow. In the task flow, you can decide what is based on, or the fragments, what is based fragments on windows or more or less on canvases. And we provide a very simple task flow based on such kind of go form, open form, call form, and so on. So to have a navigation between the different kind of views. If you record the user stories in the beginning and you see the process of the user story, you can consider to generate task flows out of the recorded process. What we also do is we generate a couple of custom classes for you and provide them for you. That is what you do in your second lesson for ADF. If you start with ADF deployment or development, you see, oh, I read about an ADF util class, and I see a JSF util class, and I like to have some classes to use PLSQL code inside my ADF. And that's what we always provide. In the model project, we generate a util class for DB calls You can put that into your common model or in each and every model. That's the decision you made during the generation process. And we provide these methods. On the other side, there are a couple of JavaScript code provided to have some functionality in the UI. You are known from the form side. Okay, and we generate Java classes. That's what you think about it. Does it make sense or not? Think about ADF as a framework and provide you the database access through business components for Java. So you not think about a clear and very straight approach of object inside of Java. There's no object model inside your Java world. It's a view and entity object model you use. So it's not for data model good for, but more or less for the code itself. So think about a method of deleting an item or proving the requirements or the check constraints for an item to prove the validation. These are very small and simple triggers in forms you use. And we do two things. First of all, we translate those methods into Java notation. There's a 3 years ongoing approach analyzing PL/SQL and understanding the syntax of PL/SQL and transform those into the Java world. That could be helpful for like while loops, for loops, variable declaration, accessing to entity and view objects, and so on. And on the other side, we show where is the good container for your new code. If you start fresh from forms to ADF, you know what is a then validated item trigger good for, but where is the corresponding container in the ADF world. And that's what we do during the generation. We generate the implementation classes in ADF and give you an information, give you a hint. Oh, look over here. That's the correct place for your forms trigger. That is the old code. We overtake the old PL/SQL code as a kind of command, and you can decide to do that or not. And you can move them away, throw them away if you finish your changes, or you can stay on it to have a good idea what is going on in this code. Okay, to have a deeper understanding for a forms developer in the new world of ADF, we generate or we create a plug-in tool. It's called the Migration Overview Assistant. And with this, you can access the old forms application and directly see what's generated out of this. And last but not least, we generate kind of documentation out of the process in two ways. The first way is we see and give you the information what could generate it. So you see a couple of 100% in the last column. That is very, very good. So each and every item, canvas, module, etc. could be generated. And on the other hand, you might see, if you could read it, such manual adjustment. That's a cookbook I mentioned before. You see a work list, a task list, what is open, what has to be adjusted to have a runnable environment. Okay, so take a look once more at the JDeveloper. Let me share my screen, just stop this presentation and put the JDeveloper in front, make them visible over the complete screen. So you see the JDeveloper with our project we open from the file system, and you see it's a typical ADF project. You see the model. Inside the model, you see the shared code we marked as to be generated into this. You see the entity and view objects, whatever you generated. On the other side, you see the view controller project with its naming convention and so on. So what we have is on the tools, PITSS tool, the PITSS migration overview. And let me maximize those. What you see is on the first side that the parameters you use to generate the code you are looking on. And you see what's going on and what's your naming convention. And you have the detail page with more of interest. And you see the list of forms modules belonging to your cluster. It's a very small cluster, only 2 forms modules are over here. And in the forms, you have on one hand the summary for the forms. You see, okay, from the blocks, we have 4 of the 5 blocks we could transform into the ADF world. Perhaps the last one is a control block. It doesn't make sense to migrate them. And we see the other module with its values. From the module, you see the form details, all the objects inside the forms module. So you can see the blocks. We have a control block, we have a navigation control, navigator, and so on. So you see what's going on here. Let's take a look at the customer more. The customer block, it was a block with 13 items. You see the items, you see the block trigger. You can read the block trigger, but most of interest, you could see what is generated out of this. You see a generation implementation point. Oh, an object inside the model project is generated out of these blocks. Let's have a chance. Let's have a look what it's good for. Do a double click and you switch to the object in the ADF world, which is generated out of these blocks. And it makes sense. It's a customer as customer view object, the view object based on an entity object. And all the attributes is generated, even the transient attribute based on a formula inside forms is generated out of this. And if you like to see, oh, where is it? Where could I find it? Over in the navigator bar, okay, switch to the application window and we say, oh, over here, it's based underneath the view objects, customers, that's my naming convention. And we see the implementation class is also generated. It's an empty class because we have no methods yet generated inside, but the object is generated for you. Okay, let's have a look on the Java side. What's going on the Java side? We generated, that's what we marked, if you remember, in the PITSS.CON property palette. We marked to have the old source code available. So you see there's a key edit trigger before we migrate the forms application. And what is good for, it has a call form to another form. The form is story. Okay, so what we do is we generate out of Java code. And what we do is, oh, it's a call form. That sounds like to be a task flow to navigate to another object, and the object name is story. So what we do is we return a value story flow to allow the task flow to use these events for navigation inside the task flow. So it makes sense what we generate, or it's very helpful what we generate. You see the object container where it's putting in, and you see what is the idea, what could it look like into the ADF world, and allow you a very smart overview and smart step from forms into the ADF world. Okay, let's go back to the application or to the presentation. That is what we generate for the source code. You see the objects are generated, the Java code is generated, and so on. But we support also the project management on the other side. Perhaps you remind the first webinar, we talk about the analyze feature of PITSCON, and we know how complex your forms is. If we estimate a migration, we don't do it like, oh, give me the number of forms modules, and in average we do some fancy things. No, we have a very deep understanding, and we know where are the pitfalls inside your forms module, what are easy forms and what are complex forms. And this is the base for an estimation for the project plan. So we put all the forms module into a project plan for the last step of adjustment inside the ADF world. And we monitor the work allocation, what is the ongoing work. Usually we adjust a forms module to a specific developer, and the developers say, okay, I'm ready, I need 2 days to fulfill all requirements in this module. So we go back to PITSCON, we mark that module as done, and we could see a kind of burn down chart, what's open, what is the rest on workload. So we help you to manage the project after you generate the code. If you have your own management tool, we also are able to generate the workload out of PITSCON for different kind of tools. What we usually find in the project is we have a couple of customers using Jira, other sides using Mantis, some kind of customers use Trello to monitor the workload. And PITSS.CON has an interface available for these management tools. So after the migration step, you can generate a list or the workload or a backlog or whatever you like to name it for those tools. And from this point going on, manage your project with Trello, Jira, or so on. Okay, we heard a lot about ADF, but what about Apex? Apex is more or less the same behavior. You have to talk about the architecture, so splitting down into different applications or having only one big application. That's the decision you made. Also think about the style sheet. There's a couple of themes available in Apex, and we support during the migration to switch to a different kind of theme. But that's all. So there are not so much properties available, not so much screws available to adjust during the generation, but the philosophy at the end is the same. You generate your cluster, you put it together, you generate it in the Apex world, you get a workload, you get an information what could generate it, what not, and you have the side-by-side view inside the development environment. You know the development environment from Apex is very simple, it's just a browser, but we have an Apex front end available on PITSS.CON to allow you to have a look on those information of interest during the migration. So you can have two browser tabs side by side, one for the Apex application development and the other side for PITSS.CON and looking into the PITSS.CON repository. It's not a worth to mention, but the Apex front end from PITSS.CON is implemented by PITSS.CON and generated with PITSS.CON out of the existing Forms application. As Sasha mentioned in the beginning, and that's not all. We use ADF, it's Apex, it's open source Java, you can use it. And last but not least, we have a customer, we support him to go to .NET with this UI. So he stay on the Oracle backend machine using web service in the middle as a kind of SOA architecture, and putting the front end as a .NET UI, because the UI has to be run on very old handheld devices. But it's all done by PITSS.CON. It's generated out from PITSS.CON and with a couple of artifacts to support the .NET developers to be very quick and easy in generating the UIs. So that's a very good project, and we have a very happy customer. He estimated the complete project if he has done this on his own with his own developers, and we are 3 times faster than his team, and it's very good for him and very good for us. So my last slide is what's going on, what's happening after that. Usually you see in the beginning you start with a cluster in the generation process. It's not a big bang approach. You have a cluster for your first step, and with this you start. And during this cluster you have some learning curve. You see, oh, there are fancy features available in ADF and I'd like to import that into my application, but right now I've forgotten in the beginning during the migration. Right now I'd like to have that. Can I have that? Okay, no problem. During generation of the next processes or the next clusters, we adjust the generation process. We take some screws. We make some final adjustments on the PITSS.CON repository for you to save time during the implementation phase and to ensure the quality for the next clusters. That's usual. That's happened in every project. You made your own experience in the first cluster. Even Oracle do it on its own. After the first cluster for Oracle Retail, they saw, oh, we could improve the table behavior in ADF. We could put some additional functionalities into the header of each table. Let's do that. Okay, we regenerate the table components and regenerate the source code for the second cluster, and that help a lot of time to save during the rest of the implementation of Oracle Retail. Okay, that's what I'd like to talk, or what I'd like to bring to you, a couple of ideas and a deeper understanding what migration phase is good for and what's going on in this phase. A very, very interesting phase in my opinion. And I'd like to hand over for a wrap-up to Sasha, if it's okay for you.
Yeah, please do that.
Okay.
Take it. I have it already, Stefan.
Oh, sorry, it's late.
I took it. I took it. So, well, thank you very much, Stefan, for this very interesting inside view, the technical overview and provision of benefits possible, I think, for a lot of applications. I'm pretty confident that attendees realized potential benefits for their project requirements as well. So I would like to encourage you again to place your questions. In a few minutes we can start the Q&A session. If there are any questions that came up right now, I'm pretty sure that most of attendees are aware that the migration process finally is not a simple push on the button, but moreover requires a proper analysis and application preparation possible depending on individual requirements. So finally, it's about shortened projects. It's about safe migration. It's about cost and time effectiveness so that you can move forward with your core business successfully. Well, I'd like again to encourage you, your questions. Just one feedback from the poll that we have had earlier, so that you have at least a feeling about the attendees today, talking about your target platform. So 25% move forward or plan to move forward to 12c. 38% of attendees, today's attendees, to Apex, 13% to ADF, and 25% to open source Java. Well, this is an indicator for us, of course, to point out probably in the next session, discussing more deeper about Apex migration, or probably also the possibilities towards open source and Java. I think this is an interesting part for a lot of current forms users. Also interesting is the timeline when we talk about modernization projects schedule. So 50% of today's attendees really plan or really schedule some actions within the next 6 months, 20% within the next year, and 30%, well, probably in the pre-phases. Just want to point out that in all these phases we can support you with our expertise. So we have certain offers for you, so offers around modernization. We talk about different phases depending on the timeline schedule that you currently face. If you're in the orientation phase, we have offers to support you with a individual web session or on-site session, the path to ADF, for example. So this is a sample for ADF, could be for Apex or any other user interface as well. We have more dedicated workshops that we offer, on-site workshops, and orientation day we call this. So discussing with you based on your individual requirements if ADF is the right solution for you. We can do an assessment. So that means forms to ADF for you, talking about based on an analysis of your individual application, what could be the next steps and what are the efforts and requirements that you have to face, and also the success phase that we're doing or offering POCs or pilots, or support you during the whole process, really depending on your individual requirements. So all of these single steps could be an option for you. Stefan pointed out the analysis capability. We do have workshops and analysis procedures and offers that we have talking about your individual application to point out an upgrade, an ADF modernization. What does it mean? What are the efforts? What are the pitfalls based on your individual application? And of course, to round this up, finally, we offer trainings around PITSS about the development environment. You get all this information and expertise out of one hand. So to be assured that we can support you in all of your single steps, single project steps, and single requirements. Okay, so if there are any questions, we can discuss. If there are not, probably there's too much information or a lot of information given today. Stefan, very good. I think I like it very much, this presentation today. I hope you too. If there are any questions that may come up afterwards, probably Stefan, you have one. Do you see one or?
No, not yet.
Okay.
But if there's some questions coming up later on, please feel free to give us an information, give us a mail or whatever. We are happy to support you.
Definitely, definitely. So just point out our next events and webinars. If you are located in the UK, or if you plan a trip to London, I would like to point out that we have a PITSS Day with Oracle, with Accenture, talking about software landscapes. That's an event October 11th in Oracle DVP in Reading. Check out our webpage. You can register there. It's a free event, very interesting sessions. I can promise you it's really a time well spent. We have an Oracle Apex Roadshow also starting in October in Germany, in Hamburg, Frankfurt, Stuttgart, and Munich. We have another webinar scheduled for 26th of October talking about digital transformation. That's an webinar as today, same place, same time. And of course at the Oracle User Group, a big event here in Germany. You can find us at the exhibition area 206. Would be happy to welcome you in person. If you have the chance, take a look for PITSS. For sure it would be nice to talk to you. Okay, so if there are any questions that may come up now for the Americas, contact my colleague Jason Mara at jmara@pitsamerica.com. For UK, my colleague David Brown, dbrown at PITSS.CON, or myself, Sasha Sander at ssander@PITSS.COM. For UK or other global regions, would be happy to welcome you and your questions. Okay, so far from our side at this point, let me thank you, Stefan, for this great presentation. I enjoyed. I hope you too. Thank you for your time. We're looking forward to meeting you. Have a great day wherever you are. Probably a nice evening. Hope to meet you again soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.